Welcome to the Solid Verbal. The Solid Verbal.
Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
I've heard so many players say, well, I want to be happy. You want to be happy for a day? Eat a steak.
It's that woo-woo!
And now, Dan and Ty.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal, boys and girls. My name is Ty Hildenbrand, joining me as always on Sunday Fun Day, Dan Rubenstein. Sir, how are you?
I'm good, Ty. I'm getting used to the 2 a week new schedule. I'm getting my legs under me.
Yeah, your sea legs, sure.
It feels right.
It does, doesn't it?
It does. So life is good. I'm excited for this. You already know what the show is about because you've already downloaded the show. So you see that there is some sweet, what is it? It's a Conference USA spectacular.
Yes, it is.
With a little bit of SEC East thrown in.
Excuse me, a fleck.
A fleck.
A fleck of SEC East coverage in here as well.
Just a smidge. Yes, correct.
Don't forget, you can follow us out on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the usual hotspots. We do have a website, solidverbal.com. It will be renovated shortly, hopefully by the early part of August.
Okay.
And we also have a live show, which we've been promoting the hell out of.
Yes.
But yeah, August the 11th at the Vidum Theater in Chicago. If you go to solidverbaltickets.com, tickets are still available, but we have sold an awful lot of them. It's on track to be our biggest show yet. It is our 2018 Fantasy Things Draft, which you and I had a ton of fun doing in New York about a year ago. And I think now we've got a better sense for the rhymes and rhythms of how that show should operate. This one will be our best live show to date. No two ways about it.
And if you're listening after August 11th, because this is on-demand audio.
Ooh, right. That's right.
Damn, did you miss a fun show?
What were you doing? Why didn't you travel to Chicago?
I am glad it was at a theater because the stage work was incredible.
Can you believe that you drafted Brian Kelly, national championship winning coach? It was amazing.
I feel great about it, Ty.
Amazing.
I'm all in.
That out.
I'm all in, as you know, if you attended the show, or if you're just listening to this and there are no more tickets, in that case, shoot us an email and we'll figure out a way to get you in. We're still going to charge you.
Yeah, sure.
But shoot us an email because sometimes people have last minute things come up and they have tickets to give away. So hopefully everybody can get in that wants to get in. We are looking forward to that show as we record this in July.
Absolutely. Well, without further ado, let's start with the SEC East. We don't need to punk our Solid Verbal listeners out there. Let's talk about the eastern side of the SEC. Dan, it wasn't all that long ago that we were making jokes in the show calling it the SEC least.
I mean, I suppose one of us was making that joke.
SEC least. That sort of changed a year ago because Georgia came on like a freight train. They made it to the national championship game, went 11-1 regular season, won the SEC title, beat Oklahoma in a timeless 2-overtime game in the Rose Bowl, and then lost in OT in a great national championship game to Alabama. But they were clearly the top dog in the eastern side of the SEC. The rest of that side of the conference, though, interesting, I think, is one way you could phrase it, but we had incredible turmoil at Florida, incredible turmoil at Tennessee that extended beyond the regular season, even after they fired their coach. We had a bunch of from Vanderbilt at 5-7.
Yep, but a hell of a start, though. Just a hell of a 3-0.
A hell of a 3-0. We had a Missouri team that really picked it up offensively speaking. A Kentucky team that went to a bowl game at 7-5, a South Carolina team that got 8 wins. So there are obviously reasons, if only because it's the SEC, to be very interested in how this side of the conference shakes out. Dan, we'll start where we've started the last 2 shows now. When you look just from a very broad perspective at the SEC East, at this side of the conference, what are your general takeaways?
Georgia is distancing themselves. Georgia is they're ahead, and the perception of the SEC East will jump if Florida and Tennessee in the next couple of years become only pretty good. Then the SEC East is fine.
Okay.
If Florida becomes very good and Tennessee becomes good, then it's the SEC East is among the nation's best divisions with the Big Ten East and perhaps the Pac-12 North and the SEC West, and maybe the ACC Fat Atlantic. But as of right now, the headline programs are just the headline program.
I would agree with that. So let's start at the top. Let's start with Georgia. I told you their incredible run last year, loaded with talent again this year. There's no denying that. They've got
the Georgia preview is going to be very short.
It's going to be very short and sort of boring. And I think that's the way that Kirby Smart wants it. He's
for sure
seemingly built an Alabama East in his short time now in Athens, and he's stocked the cupboard with talent across the board. There are a few questions that I have about this team, particularly on defense, but by and large, they're the odds-on favorite to win the East. The questions I have do not at all numb my confidence in how I think this year is going to go for the Bulldogs. I don't know if they go 11-1 again. I have questions about that, but I think on the whole, they're still your favorite on the eastern side of the conference. The care factor for me is threefold. Okay? First off, they've got an embarrassment of riches at quarterback.
They do.
With Jake Fromm, who stepped in for Jake Eason a year ago, and now another J named quarterback in Justin Fields has stepped in to be his backup. I still don't know why he picked Georgia. I know he's from Kennesaw, Georgia, and that the University of Georgia is a wonderful place to just go and be and live and exist.
Of course.
But in terms of a football opportunity for Justin Fields, it makes no sense to me that he would pick that situation, knowing that Jake Fromm's a true freshman, led them to the national championship game.
He's a competitor, Ty.
I don't care, Dan. I'm very interested, and I care a great deal in whether or not he will transfer before season's end. There is a chance that could happen.
The most reasonable situation is he gets in against not so good teams, even if it's when the game is still in hand or within reason, whatever. He will definitely get in at the end of games to get reps in the way that Tua did last year. And, if Georgia looks like we think they should look like, even replacing as much as they do on defense with a pretty experienced offense, then Jake Fromm is probably playing well.
Right.
Meaning there's garbage time to come in during. And the most reasonable thing is Jake Fromm will play well because we saw him play super well as a true freshman, thrust into the spotlight into a pretty crazy situation, and he more than rose to the occasion. So if Jake Fromm is healthy, which is never a given, but if he's healthy-ish and keeps improving, which is, again, the most reasonable expectation, there will be at least 2 years of Justin Fields not being the dude, which is fine. There's an expectation with quarterbacks that blue chip quarterbacks that they come in and win the job as a true freshman or get time as a freshman, start as a sophomore. Doesn't look realistic, but Georgia fans, I'm sure, are going to say, well, Jacob Eason got hurt, and then it turned out Jake Fromm was better. Why can't it happen with Justin Fields? That's asking a lot. That is asking a lot.
Yeah.
You're asking somebody to be better than Jake Fromm is way ahead, to me, than being better than Jacob Eason.
Oh, absolutely.
That is my thought, that I am speaking for myself only.
Absolutely.
So the point is well taken. I hope that it's not a situation like what happened. I don't think it will be because they're different quarterbacks. What happened at Texas A&M with Kyle Allen and Kyler Murray, which it was just the flip-flopping, you have two quarterbacks, you have none. Nobody developed. Everybody was pissed. Both of the guys left. I hope it's handled in a more gracious way.
Well, we see this happen around college football, and it's not always as combustible as that Texas A&M situation, but we saw it. I saw it at Notre Dame. Deshaun Kaiser and Malik Zaire, right? I mean, that situation did not materialize well at all. And it's happened to better coaches than Kirby Smart, and certainly worse coaches than Kirby Smart, where you've got two quarterbacks and ultimately end up with none. He will not manage it that poorly. I hope not. The utmost faith in him that he will manage this appropriately. Now, Jake Fromm had the weird boating injury thing.
Offhand, yes.
On his offhand in the offseason. It by all accounts, will not affect him for the start of the college football season. But just an interesting situation to kind of keep in mind here, that they've got a really high-level quarterback recruit in Justin Fields from the state of Georgia. Presumably, Jake Fromm's backup. We'll see how that situation plays itself out longer term. For the interim, though, they're fine at quarterback. No matter who plays, they're fine at quarterback.
They're fine at quarterback. They're very good at receiver, especially now that Demetrius Robertson is transferring. I don't believe he'll play this year, but just in terms of building depth long term. If you remember, he was at Cal.
Yep.
Transferred. He's from Georgia. Transfers now to Georgia. They return 3 guys with a ton of experience out wide. The offensive line is intact, even though they lose Nick Chubb and Sony Michel. Obviously, your guy, your pivotal person, DeAndre Swift.
My boy, yeah.
Your guy, and he is joined by Elijah Holyfield and Zamir White. If White is healthy enough to play, he, of course, was the number 1 running back of the previous recruiting class. Defensively, that's where the questions are. Can they be as good as they were last year? No, because they were excellent last year.
They were incredible last year, right?
But will they be good? Probably. They probably will be good. And Ty, their road schedule is fine. They go to South Carolina early, which I think is tricky given it's game 2, and they always do play South Carolina early. But then to Missouri, which moved the ball. I'm not as high, I think, on Missouri and Drew Lock as it seems the consensus opinion about them are. But
you know what,
good.
though? I'm not as high either. However, However, this is a defense for Georgia that loses Roquan Smith, a centerpiece of that defense. There is turnover elsewhere on defense. If there's a team that can put that defense to the test early, is probably Mizzou on the road. So that in and of itself has a little bit of a care factor for me.
Yeah, I wish it were after, in terms of hoping for a good game. I wish it were like immediately after South Carolina or immediately after somebody else. It's after Mitsu. So not as demanding. But yeah, they go to LSU, who has a number of questions on both sides.
I'm out on LSU this year, by the way. Just throwing that
out there. I am. I'm trying to talk myself into something, but it's tough. We'll get there on that episode.
Yeah, I'm out.
And I'm pretty out on Kentucky as well, and that's the other road game, and they get Tech at home, which for whatever reason, playing Tech at home has been a bit of a challenge recently, but
there are a lot of teams on this schedule that I'm out on.
Yeah, and they have Auburn at home, which is great.
I'm out on Auburn. I'm out on Kentucky.
I like Auburn.
I'm out on Tennessee for obvious reasons. Probably not as high on South Carolina as you.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're
feel
seeing
pretty
like a
good
very
about Georgia.
down SEC.
SEC least, the return. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, but you're even saying you're down on Auburn and LSU.
SEC lest. I don't know. It's, We'll talk about that when we get
It's
to
an
the
SEC feast. They all eat each other.
That's right. That's right.
So, no, the broad thing is, even though Georgia is rebuilding or reloading, whatever, on defense, schedule-wise, having Tennessee at home, obviously, the neutral site with Florida, as they do every year, it shapes up pretty well for a what will probably be a transition year, like a 10-2 year, which is, if that's a transition year, life is great.
Yeah, I think it's 10-2, 11-1, and no worse than that for Georgia. Yeah. Okay. Where do we go next then in the SEC East? I have a number of thoughts on this front. Now, I think I've already tipped my hand a little bit that I'm not high on Kentucky, but you aren't either. Tennessee is in a bit of a reboot now with Jeremy Pruitt being their new head football coach. I think that leaves us with 3 realistic options to be the next man up, next team up in the SEC East. The first is Florida. Mm-hmm. The second would be South Carolina. And the third would be Missouri. Okay. I said that I'm not quite as high on Missouri. I don't think you are either. So we'll drop them from the equation, which leaves us to Florida, who went 4-7 last year, got a new coach in Dan Mullen, and South Carolina, who went 8-4 a year ago, is probably Will Muschamp's best team since getting to Columbia, but maybe doesn't have as much talent. Definitely doesn't have as much talent as the Florida Gators. So who is next team up for you in the East?
Let's just talk Florida, because there are a number of storylines, the top level one being a new coach, Dan Mullen, who spoke this past week, obviously, at SEC media days and his job that he has ahead of him, talent-wise, they are not where they were the last time he was in Gainesville. I imagine they will be relatively soon. Quarterback looks to be a three-way battle. Emory Jones, the true freshman, Felipe Franks, the sophomore, and Kyle Trask, I want to say, is somebody who is sort of a dark horse here. They like his arm. But a couple experienced receivers to throw to. The line is relatively intact, which is both good and bad. I like Martez Ivey. Other pieces a little bit less so. Running backs in good shape. I would trust, and this is not saying all that much because Florida's everything was just trash last year. I would trust Florida to have a winning record in large part because of their offense this year.
I would agree with that, Dan. Yeah.
We agree.
We do agree. So Florida is interesting. The care factor, again, something we keep coming back to here.
Yeah, why care?
Is really high because Dan Mullen comes over. They've got a ton of guys back. It's a new system. I don't want to compare it to Nebraska. That's not an apt comparison, but it is at least somewhat of a parallel track in that we've got a lot of guys returning, a lot of experience returning, and they're returning into a new system, which makes things interesting, if nothing else. And the offense should be vastly improved. I've got as many questions about Florida as any team in the nation.
Wow.
As many questions about it. But what's interesting, first and foremost to me, is that Dan Mullen steps into a situation where his prime directive, Dan, if nothing else, his prime directive is to fix the damn offense.
Correct.
Fix the damn offense. If Florida went out there and gave up 30 points a game, I'm not convinced that Florida fans would even really give a damn if he could score 35 a game as well. I just think they want to see some offense. They are feasting for an offense. If he can fix the offense, if he can squeeze just a little bit more blood out of that damn stone, Florida's an 8 or a 9 win team.
Sure.
An 8 or a 9 win team. And that's where you start the conversation on Florida this year. If they can be at all better on offense, now with a truly offensive-minded coach, something we've said before, it should be a success story in year one for Dan Mullen.
Great news for Dan Mullen. Well, first of all, great news for Florida fans and people who like college football and just scanning around the college football universe. Florida has a coach with a likable personality for the first time in like 15 years. I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
I'm great with that. Cool. The other thing is Florida's schedule is kind of gravy.
Yeah.
If they're the biscuits, they're smothered, and it's pretty nice. They get Kentucky at home early on. They still don't lose to Kentucky. As bad as things get, they don't lose to Kentucky. Barely last year, though. Their road games within the conference, they go to Tennessee, which good year to go to Tennessee if we think they're improving, which I think is reasonable. To Mississippi State with a new coach, but intriguing new coach if you're going to make a case for it, but Georgia's neutral, and that's it within the SEC, and they're on the road at Florida State. But this is, in terms of the SEC East competition, which is who they need to jump to to make noise in their conference. They have Missouri at home, they have South Carolina at home, they have their cross-division rival and LSU at home. It's fine. Colorado State, as a result of probably an old McElwain deal, comes to Gainesville, and they're fine under Bobo. Pretty good, actually. But the homeness of Florida's schedule is wonderful.
It's always wonderful, Dan.
Yeah, it's true.
Always. And economical, because rarely do they leave the state of Florida if they don't have to. Specifically, I am very curious about the quarterback position. We've talked ad nauseum about it here since Dan Mullen was hired, and specifically since Emory Jones signed on to be a Florida Gator. He, of course, is the guy that we've kind of fashioned as a Mullen guy, a Mullen type, someone who could come in and run that system that Dan Mullen likes to run. But Felipe Franks is a rising sophomore. Depending where you look, he could be your starting quarterback. It does come down to...
He's a sophomore. He's a sophomore.
It does come... Okay, fair.
I watched him as a freshman. He's a sophomore.
Just a sophomore.
Yeah.
Franks versus Jones is probably your quarterback battle. But elsewhere, really deep. Again, 19 returning starters. Jordan Scarlett, a name people who listen to this show are familiar with, right?
Michael Pirine, very good. Yeah.
Absolutely. The entire offensive line is back. They're deeper. They're more experienced. They're more talented at all three levels of the defense, not to mention the schedule, which we've talked a little bit about here. So I think there are very good reasons to feel solidly about Florida as we enter 2018. And again, just get a little bit more out of the offense, and at a minimum, you're an 8-win team.
Yeah, I wouldn't say the defense is ready to be the same. They took a step back last year, as everything did. I like pieces, but in terms of depth, in terms of the too deep, the talent level in Gainesville needs to jump up considerably to get to where things are with Georgia. But
yes,
there are pieces. I like their cornerbacks a lot. CeCe Jefferson has been a mainstay. Stay healthy, please. And they should be winning 8 or 9 games if everything goes well coached and the culture looks to be more intact than it was last year.
Let's go to South Carolina, Dan.
Oh, and 3rd and Grantham. There's that.
3rd and Grantham, that's right.
Always
Oh
an
my
adventure.
gosh.
Yeah.
How could we possibly forget about that?
I think it'll be fine. I think their defense will be good. He has always been at least solid. He's had a high floor.
3rd and Grantham coming to Florida. Wow.
Coming to Florida.
All right. Well, that could really test my theory
Okay.
about
Now
how Florida
taking a half
fans
step
feel
back.
about the season, offense versus defense.
True.
All right.
Okay.
Let's go to South Carolina, Dan. 8-4 a year ago. This is a team with 14 returning starters. Mm-hmm. They've got Jake Bentley coming back, quarterback.
One of the quietest 8-4s in the country last year.
Very quiet, yeah.
Yeah.
They've got Rico Dowdle. You know him at running back?
Oh, for years and years have I known Rico. No.
We call him Rico Suave here on the show, Dan.
We can do better. We can do better. That's what everybody's going to do, Ty. We can do better. We'll go to Rico Go Gowdy.
To Rico?
Yeah. I don't know. Continue.
Decent depth at running back. You've got a good wide receiving core led by our boy Deebo Samuel.
Oh, so happy he's back. College football was worse without him last year when he got hurt.
Defense, I'm not sure what we've got on defense, to be honest.
Defense should be all right.
South
they
Carolina.
lose a couple of big dudes.
Sky Moore gone.
Yeah. They've recruited well, again, quietly. It was a quiet 8-4. They keep putting together top 20 classes, so they're building depth. The talent level is pretty high. They're doing really well in the Carolinas, and I expect, because again, if we're talking about the gravy schedule of Florida, it's pretty nice to be South Carolina and being in a year where you have quarterback continuity. I know it's going to a new tempo system on offense, but the reason to care is new look offense, a volatile head coach, and they're going to win a bunch of games. I don't know if it's 8 or 9 games once again, but by the time they get to Clemson, they should be beating teams that they have that they're even talent-wise with, because the continuity in Columbia is ahead of many, many places on their schedule.
If I called Jake Bentley a poor man's Alex Hornibrook, would that be fair?
I don't have his interception numbers and when he threw those numbers. He really did. I think he struggled down the stretch
last season. Here are the numbers. Jake Bentley, 2,700 yards passing, 18 touchdowns, 12 interceptions.
Okay.
Alex Hornibrook, 2,600 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions.
All right. Yeah. I think Jake Bentley probably has a better arm, and I think Alex Hornibrook probably has a better situation around him.
Yeah.
But curious to see with the new look offense how they use Deebo, who was as significant an all-purpose weapon as we've had in the SEC East in recent years. So that's great, and I'm pretty optimistic with South Carolina. I think they can win 8+.
8+.
8+. If you look at their schedule,
I've got it.
Sure losses
I've got it in
are
front
as
of me.
follows.
Go ahead.
Yes. Clemson and Georgia.
Okay.
That's all I really see. And they get Georgia at home week 2 with an evolving, changing Georgia situation. So I don't feel good about it, but they held Georgia, I think, 10 points. Georgia averaged like 34 a game last year, and they held them to 24. So recent defensive success against the Dogs. I am saying South Carolina can come within, 6 points. If they don't get to 9 wins, they're going to be right there.
Okay. I mean, I could see that case being made. I am instantly intrigued by South Carolina. I care about South Carolina because of that game at home against Georgia on September the 8th.
Sure.
I agree with you that it's most probably a loss because Georgia's loaded. But couldn't you just see that being super defensive and Deebo Samuel breaks a play to keep it interesting late in the game? I could totally see that happen.
Absolutely. No, the place is going to be, the Williams-Brice is going to be electric. And I do not anticipate a 35-7 Georgia win at all.
The home team has fared very well in that series. Again, I think Georgia wins, but you could at least envision a scenario in which the game's a lot of fun to watch. And going back to what I said at the top, this is Will Muschamp's best team since getting to South Carolina. Are we in agreement on that front?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what that means, but I think that's right.
I think it's his best team. I think this is his best cast of characters since getting there. So that in and of itself makes him interesting. It makes me care. The game against Georgia very early on should be a lot of fun. And there are fun playmakers. Jake Bentley, I kind of threw him under the bus, but if he can take a step forward and be more careful with the football, if he can be more accurate, they've got a good running back, they've got an exciting wide receiver. That's generally all I need to care. Plus, they play in the SEC. Who knows?
My early concern is probably secondary, but outside of Jake Fromm and Drew Lock, I don't know how much that matters in the East.
Okay. Well, let's go to Drew Lock then.
Okay.
Let's talk about Mizzou. Mizzou went 7-5 a year ago. And let's talk about that campaign, shall we?
Let's. I'm ready. That was a ride.
It was a hell of a ride, wasn't it?
It was.
Didn't we have an early season Barry Odom press conference?
We did. And it seemed not alarming, but it seemed like he had a screw a little bit loose, not in an actual way, but in a momentary way.
He was feeling some emotion.
Yes,
in that
that's
moment.
great.
To take you back on that Missouri 2017 roller coaster, they beat Missouri State, classic in-state Missouri rival, 72-43 to open the year. Now, there were some questions about giving up 43 points to Missouri State, but they scored 72, so who cares?
That's true, and fired their defensive coordinator shortly thereafter.
That's right. But then after that game, after that resounding W, lost by 18 to South Carolina, by 32 at home to Purdue, which was a bit of an eye-opener.
Yeah.
Okay. They lost handily to Auburn by a 51-14 margin, right? What are you feeling at this point, Dan?
Things are quicksanding, Ty.
Little quicksanding.
Rapidly.
Lost by 6 on the road to Kentucky. And then lost, 25 here? 53-28 to Georgia. So at this point
they threw on Georgia a little bit, though. There was that silver lining in that game for Drew Lock and Jamon Moore.
They covered the spread, right? They covered the spread, sure.
Hey, that's a thing.
But at this point, they're sitting 1-5. 1-5. Then they go on a run. They beat Idaho. They beat UConn. They beat Florida, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Arkansas. I'm not going to pretend that was prime competition down the stretch, but Drew Lock put up numbers, Dan. Drew Lock threw for 44 touchdowns last year. Threw for almost 4,000 yards. That was good. Offensively speaking, they were pretty solid, and again, not the greatest of competition, but the defense did seem to put it more together down the stretch here. So that's something of a building block.
Here's the thing with talking about their competition during that stretch. Pretty good teams lay waste to not so good teams. That's how it works. Nobody's talking about Missouri within the context of winning the conference. It's Missouri within the context of, did they improve? Did they take care of business? Did they look cohesive? For sure they did. And developed a really nice quarterback in Drew Lock that I don't think is Manning passing academy praise, worth following. But I've enjoyed watching Drew Lock. He's put up numbers. I would like to see him perform in the biggest games this season, which, where do they go? They go to Purdue. He should light them up. They go to South Carolina in that secondary. That should be a nice enough spot for him. He's probably going to be not good against Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Goes to Florida and to Tennessee. And the rest of it is fine. Throwing into the Arkansas defense to finish the year, throwing into the Vanderbilt defense. He should put up ridiculous numbers this year.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to watch. I am just, with what he has around him, I like the running game. I like that he has his line, I think, pretty much all back.
Yep, they're all back.
And he loses best receiver from last year, but they've recruited well enough there. I think the defense will do them some favors. Terry Beckner Jr., hopefully he's healthy. Anchor is another pretty good defensive line, and there's a ton of experience on defense to put him in a good position. I think he is like a B+, A- when I'm hearing a lot of A+ talk.
Okay. I have more questions about the defensive line. I think that'll be that'll be a bit of a soft spot for that defense. But I do tend to agree with you. A lot coming back from a year ago. A lot of reason to be optimistic about this Missouri team. The question, though, is what will the offense look like now with a new offensive coordinator? Mm-hmm. And that brings me to perhaps, and I know this will take you by surprise, my most forced joke since we've done this podcast since 2008.
God. Let me stretch real quick. I want to absorb this joke in its truest form.
You know it's a good joke because I have to explain it beforehand.
Oh,
that's always the mark of a true funny.
As is always the case with the best jokes.
Who's the new offensive coordinator this year?
It appears to be Derek Dooley.
What is Derek Dooley's defining physical characteristic?
Just a Stonewall head of hair.
A Bob Diaco caliber head of hair.
Might be made of plastic. Who's to say?
Would you say that this year, one of the storylines we can follow is Derek Dooley and his locks of love? Being so he's got a quarterback named Drew Lock. Does that make any sense?
Ty, I'm going to throw out some silence. I just don't want you to think we've disconnected, okay?
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
I mean, you have to go for it sometimes, and it is a season preview. That's what I came up with on my lunch break.
What'd you have for lunch?
I just had a salad.
You probably needed more protein.
Maybe a little bit more protein, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think they can win 8 games. And you watch.
Wow.
You watch because they have one of the best 7 or 8 quarterbacks in the country.
They're going to beat UT Martin, Wyoming. They're going to beat Purdue.
Hey-oh.
They're going to beat Kentucky. They're going to beat Vandy. That already gets you to 5. So then we've got your choice of Georgia, no. South Carolina, they could. Alabama, no. Could definitely beat Memphis.
Whoa. Definitely?
Could definitely beat Memphis.
Wait, either say could or definitely.
Could beat Memphis.
They could. Memphis be good.
Memphis is going to be good. Could beat Memphis.
That game's going to be, that's what, mid-October?
There's going to be 100 million points in that game.
That's going to be some random spice. I'm looking forward to that.
Arkansas is a winnable game. There are winnable games on here. I'm not feeling 8. I'm not feeling 8. I'm feeling another
7-5 year?
7-5 year, yeah.
Okay.
A lot of offensive numbers, though.
Yeah, it's tough when you look at a team, and would be happy to be wrong, as, you know, their defense definitely improved the back half of last season. It's tough when you say they're going to need to win some shootouts.
Yeah.
That's it's a tough thing to do week in and week out and compete for 8-9 wins.
It's a Purdue situation, a Purdue South.
Wow. I don't know who that's more insulting to.
With a much, much better offense, and I'm not sure about defense. Probably better defense.
I'd rather have Missouri's.
Oh, yeah.
Damn. Would you rather have a super good play caller and offensive mind running things and okay talent, or good talent with the duels?
Wow.
Yeah, I think we're going duels, if anything, here. Because there's not a lot of punch in that coordinator.
What beer drinkers drink when they're not drinking beer, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd still rather have the talent. I think I'd still rather have Mizzou, but it made me think for a second.
All right. Let's go to Kentucky. Another team that went 7-5 a year ago. They've got a new quarterback. The number 1 junior college transfer in the form of Terry Wilson, a gentleman I believe you're familiar with from his time at Oregon.
Yes, Terry Wilson, I want to say, is from Kansas, somewhere in the Plains area.
Yeah.
And he came in not with like a ton of hype or enthusiasm from everywhere outside of the program. And once Justin Herbert looked pretty good, Terry Wilson had a spring where, you know, after Justin Herbert's first year, so this would have been last year with Willie Taggart, and there was never a story in practice after the spring game, that was like, I don't know, we might have a battle on our hands. There was never that story. There was never, watch out, don't count out Terry Wilson.
Right.
That was never, even in like a don't forget about, like there was nothing about, at least during his time at Oregon, at least publicly, I was definitely not at practice, but there was nothing that tells me at the moment that like, ooh, Kentucky's getting a sneak attack,
right,
in a huge talent. Now that said, he played a year in junior college between Oregon and Kentucky.
The number one junior college transfer.
Players develop. I think he has the physical traits. We'll see. Maybe the system will be tailored to him nicely. I do like Eddie Gran, their offensive coordinator, has had success at a number of places. Most notably, I think he was really good at Cincy. But there are pieces around him I like, but that is, woof, is that a question?
Well, Benny Snell is the piece.
Yes.
Benny Snell, he's a star at running back. 1,300 yards a year ago, 19 touchdowns. We had a funny little name for him. What did we call him? Benny the Jet? Benny the Jet, something like that?
Benny the Jet, something like that, yeah.
So I like him.
You didn't spend a ton of time on it, clearly.
No, I like him. But like you alluded, okay at wideout. They've got some experience in the trenches, but just not enough talent really to compete on the SEC level. Same deal in the secondary. A lot of experience, but what is the talent situation? And to what height can that talent situation get them in the SEC and the SEC East? I think the schedule is sneaky tough. And this is part of the reason why I think I care about Kentucky. Like, okay, obviously there are some headliners, being so they play in the SEC. They go to Florida. That's a tough game. They go to Texas A&M. Who knows what A&M is going to look like? But
with some rhythm, that's not till October, so A&M will be more clear on what they're trying to do. Yep.
Another headliner, they're in the East. They play Georgia. They go to Tennessee, a tough place to play. Okay. All that stuff speaks for itself. But then let's talk about Central Michigan.
They finish at Louisville with my dude, Mekhi Becton.
I was sticking with non-SEC to start, but they close out with Louisville. Mekhi Becton on the road.
It counts towards their record. It counts towards bowl eligibility, which I think they will be challenging for later on.
Puma Pass, yo.
That's true.
So we go, to Louisville last week of the year. We got a game against Mitsu in there.
Mm-hmm.
Got a game against South Carolina that I didn't mention. We talked about South Carolina earlier. There's a game against Mississippi State at home, which I am the leaning loss on that one. And then Central Michigan. Yeah.
Okay.
Central Michigan, Murray State. Two games that should be wins, but I'm just not feeling confident outside of Central Michigan, Murray State, and like Vanderbilt. Everything else is a little bit up in the air for me.
I think they're going like 5-7.
Yeah.
I think it's a tenuous year for Kentucky. I think the schedule's rough. I think the way they're built is going to be, I don't love the defense. I don't see consistency from Kentucky. They finished last year losing 4 or 5, including just by a point against Northwestern. A very strange game. That was the Thorson injury, and Benny Snell was kicked out early. I think this is a down year for Kentucky, or like a normal year for Kentucky, if we're honest. Yeah, the Terry Wilson thing, hopefully he's really good. If Terry Wilson is great, that is good news for the SEC East and just the entertainment factor therein. But I have my doubts about him. I have my doubts about the front of that defense. It's hard for me to find 7 wins.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to go 5-7. I think 5-7 is the right number. I think wins against Central Michigan, Murray State, and Vanderbilt to start, and then pick up 2 along the way. But it's going to be a drive for 6 situation for Kentucky.
I think so.
All right, let's go to Tennessee. We mentioned Tennessee a couple times here.
Lest
we forget the circus that was the Tennessee coaching search, Dan.
Just tasty all around.
Tasty all around. Had a number of names that were thrown into that hat. Eventually, they settle on Jeremy Pruitt.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, if you follow college football, SEC media days are a thing. people who reported on SEC media days have been quick to comment that Jeremy Pruitt, just as a head football coach, as someone who now has to be more in front of the media, seemed more confident, seemed to be a little bit more polished in front of the media. Maybe does that indicate anything for Tennessee football? Probably not. But if you're a Tennessee fan, being so there was a lot of turmoil at your head coaching spot, it's good to see someone go out there and present a confident face for the program.
By the way, did you see, just on the topic of SEC Media Days and Jeremy Pruitt, did you see the Aaron Murray fire?
The Aaron Murray fire.
Yeah, like the takes and like the heat that Aaron Murray was pointing in the direction of Jeremy Pruitt. So they crossed over at Georgia. Jeremy Pruitt was there for a year, and Aaron Murray is a Mark Richt dude.
Yeah.
And he just sort of said, listen, maybe I'll be proven wrong, but Jeremy Pruitt and the way he treats people and the way he goes about his business at a major program, I don't think he has the temperament to be a head coach. Like, all right, wow.
Okay, yeah.
Okie doke, Aaron
Hot
Murray.
fire.
I mean, he would know better than we would, but there is the thing of growth that can happen. And I would hope if you're a Tennessee fan, you're looking for that growth. And it's a good starting point, 4-8, Ty.
4-8, that's a good point from which to build your new dynasty. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So here is the deal. Jeremy Pruitt, I think, is working with an instant upgrade at quarterback, being so they've got Keller Christ transferring over from Stanford.
If he starts.
Because
there's... Okay, one, I'm going to throw in I disagree. I don't think Keller Christ is that good.
Okay. Speaking of hot fire here.
That's not really a fire take. You throw up enough 4 or 5 yards per attempt games, then I get why he would want a fresh start. I am all for maybe a new system, a new coordinator being the answer. I would rather see Jarek Guarantano try to grow and build as a sophomore than Keller Christ.
Okay.
I think it could be a Max Brown situation.
Okay.
An MBS, which I'm not. It doesn't make me happy. I hope Keller Christ is good because, again, just like I hope Terry Wilson is good. I want good quarterback play. Everybody should. But my voice is going up.
Yeah, okay. This reminds me of the old days of being a Penn State student.
Yeah.
And following the Penn State basketball team when they would recruit these guys. And it was like, well, the nicest thing I can say about him is that he's 6'7".
It's totally true with Christ. It's totally true.
It's just he's older and he's taller, but on the skill side of things, yeah, it remains to be seen. I think it's an upgrade, but we'll see. You can certainly present the case that it's not, or it'll be negligible. But nonetheless, there's another guy in there that Jeremy Pruitt can pick to be his starter at some point in the season if we really want to truly hedge there.
I think the combination of Keller Christ, if he ends up starting, or even if it's Jarek Guarantano, I think the combination of him with, I think it's Tyson Helton, who was the co-offensive coordinator with T. Martin at USC last year. I think that combination, as you said, it's an upgrade.
Okay.
I just remember watching Keller Christ as like this super highly touted quarterback coming out of high school, and I want to say in Palo Alto or in that area. And he's Paul Christ's nephew, I want to say. I remember watching his high school tape. I'm like, oh, he looks pretty good, but he looks excellent. I was like, damn, he looks like Joe Montana. Like he is built like he looks like Dan Marino as a high schooler and played like old Dan Marino. But yeah, he's a big dude who certainly is physically everything I guess you would want in a pocket passer, but the results just weren't there.
6'5", 234.
Playing behind an excellent offensive line at Stanford.
This offensive line is less experienced. They don't have as much depth. On the whole, I think this was a below-average offense last year. Probably will be again this year.
Whoa, slow down, Ty. Let me write this down. Tennessee had a below-average offense last year? So crazy. Okay, continue.
Defensively, a lot of talent along the line. I think decent in the linebacking core. Cornerback, a really big question mark. And the first 9 weeks of the season. Have you looked at this?
It doesn't stop. It just doesn't. It is in waves, Ty.
Yeah, West Virginia opening week in Charlotte, neutral site.
Yeah.
Not a great situation for a new head football coach with a lot of question marks abound. East Tennessee State, UTEP, okay. Next 2 weeks, that's fine. Then we've got Florida. Then we've got at Georgia, at Auburn, home against Alabama, at South Carolina. South Carolina coming off a bye week. And then finally get to November where we've got Charlotte, Kentucky, Missouri, and on the road at Vandy to close out the year. First 9 weeks of the year, it does not get any tougher than that. And especially if you're a new head football coach with just so many questions about your new team.
Luckily, the bar is low. Luckily, the bar for Tennessee football recently has been, and by recently, I mean just last year. There were moments these past couple of years where they were fun and put up a ton of yardage and wins in November, but they're going to be smothered in October. It is going to be not super fun, but it's important to remember the down times to fully remember the up times. That's going to be the seasoning. If Tennessee, and they're recruiting well, I like the hires on both sides of the ball, coaching staff wise. I think they're going to at least get to pretty good under Jeremy Pruitt.
I agree.
It has to happen eventually. But they're going to take some lumps in October. Do they make a bowl game this year?
No. Not with that schedule.
So Charlotte, Kentucky, Vandy, West Virginia, they'll beat dogs in.
5 and 7.
Tennessee State, they'll beat. UTEP, they'll kill. Yeah, I think they can sneak into a bowl.
5 and 7, 6 and 6, somewhere right around there. I go 6 and 6. What the hell?
Okay, look at you.
You talked me into it.
Yeah.
6 and 6. Okay, and then that brings us to the Vanderbilt Commodores, Dan.
Go Doors!
Yeah. I have an empty line here where I wrote down on my Google Doc why I should care about Vanderbilt football.
Charles Wright is very fun to watch.
Okay.
Gets into a lot of backfields, interrupts a lot of plays, super mean about it. Kyle Shermer is the son of your favorite NFL team's coach. Mm-hmm. Is that true?
Yeah. Ralph Webb is gone.
I had very briefly talked myself into Derek Mason, Oregon head coach, and so you can constantly refer back to that. Yeah, Zach Stacy appears to no longer be there. Ralph Webb appears to no longer be there. Jordan Matthews appears to no longer be there. Vandy's not going to be great.
No, they really aren't. They really aren't. They go to Notre Dame on September 15th. Mm-hmm. So there's that. I guess I could care at least for 1 week about Vandy football. I don't mean to diminish
Who does Notre
football.
Dame have the week before?
Notre Dame has the ferocious Cardinals of Ball State. Before.
Okay. And after?
Wake Forest.
Ooh, kiddo. So the letdown, look ahead, or just a letdown, or just a look ahead.
Or just a sandwich, yeah. Vanderbilt kind of in between there for the Irish. So I will care at least in week 3 of the season about Vanderbilt, but I think
maybe they'll give Ian Book some trouble.
Yeah, perhaps. I just think on the whole, defensively, there's a lot of yuck back there. Offensive line is entirely back. So if they can develop a bit of a ground game, that's potentially something to look forward to. But it's going to be slow going here for Vanderbilt. 5 and 7 a year ago. I'm thinking 5 and 7 at best in 2018.
Yeah. They did start 3-0 last year, and Notre Dame is that third game. So recent history dictates.
Okay.
Okay, Middle Tennessee, they can beat potentially Nevada. They beat Middle Tennessee comfortably last year. So Nevada, they should be fine against. They've taken a couple steps back. I'm just looking at their home schedule. Ole Miss could be kind of a mess. Maybe Jordan Tamu's not there in late November.
No one's covering those receivers, though. That's the problem.
1, 2, 3, 4, Kentucky. This is tough. So they're going to have to beat, if they're going to get to 5 wins, well, in Arkansas, but they could be tricky by the time, late October, more of Chad Morris.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they will have to beat Arkansas and Ole Miss to have any chance at reaching a bowl.
It's tough, man. That's tough.
It is.
All right.
But you know what? Kyle Shermer's he's not a bad quarterback. He struggled against better competition, but the better competition defensively in the SEC is pretty difficult. I think he's fine. And there's definitely a low floor for quarterback. Talent-wise around him, he's got new receivers. The line is fine, but it's tough. It's tough to find wins, Ty, where we call ourselves archaeologists.
Yeah.
But we're not excavating much.
No.
And I just reminded myself. I looked up our notes. It says here, offensive coordinator Andy Ludwig. No, I'm out. Yeah, they're not making a bowl. Sorry. It still hurts from 2004. It's still
real
hurts.
to me, damn it.
It's still so real.
All right. Well, there's your SEC East.
Yeah.
We are in agreement that Georgia
We agree.
will probably be your best team.
Here's what I will say.
Beyond that, it gets very interesting. Some interesting storylines to follow for sure.
So why care about the SEC East? As a whole.
Yeah.
I think I've got a pretty good answer.
Okay.
Remember the TV show Full House?
Of course. How could I ever forget?
Just ingrained, burnt into everybody's memories.
Yeah.
So much nostalgia. They brought it back. Who is the person or who is the character or whatever, who is the situation, whatever, that came out of that show the most successfully?
It'd be John
Most
Stamos,
successful.
Uncle Jesse.
Disagree. We should marry Kate and Ashley Olsen.
Well, okay.
Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen made a ton of money doing, and it's not just a money thing, but they were in movies. They started a fashion line. John Stamos is doing yogurt commercials. And that's fine. And listen, Oikos, come at me and Ty. We are ready. We have yogurt thoughts. But Stamos has not really captured. He's a lot of failed projects, I would say. But, right? I'm not crazy. Did I miss like a 5-year John Stamos TV show? I'm
looking at this headshot. It's mesmerizing. I'm looking at
magical.
his IMDb.
Let me ask you this, Ty. Here's
a couple
the easy
episodes of Glee.
Yeah. We love
Okay.
John Stamos.
Larry
we love John
Sanders
Stamos.
show, Private Parts. I'm
Yeah.
crying.
But it
Might just be the yogurt.
There's no Olsen twins on the new Fuller House because they've made it. They don't need it. And the SEC, to me, if you're looking at various conferences, the SEC is the Olsen twin combo, where other people on that show, Bob Saget, Dave Coulier, John Stamos, Lori Loughlin, all these people. I know you're partial to Kimmy Gibbler.
Sure.
Jodie Sweetin, Candace Cameron, married a hockey player.
Candace Cameron is like owning the Hallmark Network right now, by the way. That's what Mama H tells me.
Is that true?
Oh, yeah.
Mama H with the pulse of Hallmark?
It's either Hallmark or Lifetime, but she's in every movie come Christmas time.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the Olsen twins have just charted a path where they are above it. And I think that's where the SEC mostly has been. There have been some down years. There have been some not super deep years. But I want to be specific about them. I think the Olsen twins are sort of SEC West.
Yeah.
And I think what has happened with the SEC East being treated as a younger sibling, younger brother, younger sister. Do you know that the Olsen twins have a younger sibling who is now more successful than them?
Yeah, she's in the Avengers movies.
She's in the Avengers movie, Ty.
Sure.
She's been in a bunch of movies. And I think if you're investing in anybody long-term right now in that Olsen family, it's not Mary-Kate, it's not Ashley, it's Elizabeth Olsen. And right now, with Kirby Smart, with Dan Mullen, with a little bit of Will Muschamp pixie dust, a little bit of Jeremy Pruitt, and Elizabeth Olsen is still a little indie, I think.
Sure.
I think there's a little bit of Elizabeth Olsen to the SEC East.
Okay.
I'm ready to believe that it was just a matter of time before the younger sibling, because aside from everything about the SEC West, Georgia not only made the national championship game last year, forget that it was both SEC, just Georgia, an SEC East team made the national championship game, won an unforgettable, won the best game of the season, 3,000 miles away from home, against the best quarterback in the country, and lost the national championship game in overtime by like 6 yards on a magical play. I think the future is bright for the SEC East. God bless America, and God bless Greg Sankey.
I just want to know who is Joey Gladstone in this equation.
So in college football, which conference best represents or division?
In the SEC, who is Joey Gladstone?
Team-wise, who's Joey Gladstone? I mean, it's probably Vanderbilt.
It's got to be Vanderbilt, right?
Yeah.
Cut it out, yeah.
Yeah, Kimmy Gibbler's probably Kentucky.
See, I thought you were going to go Stamos being Georgia.
Stamos is typically Georgia, but like there was a leap from Georgia last year that I don't think Stamos has made.
Damn.
I know. I don't know why we have Stamos slander. We love Stamos. But to prove a point, I think the Olsen twins have fared better.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. Danny Tanner, probably
They themselves have had some issues.
The most milquetoast of the group. Yeah, okay.
But he had his burst. He had America's Funniest Home Videos.
He did. You could argue he was more successful than Stamos after the fact.
At that point, yes.
Yeah. Wow. That's a trip down memory lane. Okay. Conference USA.
Conference USA.
Let's fleck the Conference USA East, Dan.
Yeah. Pour some salt.
Yeah. Where are we going with this here? The big one that jumps off the page is that the Florida Atlantic Owls are still coached by one Lane Kiffin, who presumably is setting himself up for a major job at some point in the next couple of years.
You would think so. His buyout is nice and tidy.
Yeah. But I would think FAU's care factor would be derived in large part from that Lane Kiffin association.
True. I think that's reasonable to say.
Beyond that, Dan, I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel here to try and find real points of interest across the eastern half of the Conference USA.
Butch Davis.
Okay.
I'm just saying names here. Yeah, I'm not super high on Middle Tennessee. I think Mike Sanford has a lot of work ahead of him at Western Kentucky.
Yeah. I think they're probably second to last on that side of things. Charlotte, a long way to go. ODU. Didn't ODU make a bowl game last year?
I think they went 5-7. Unless they made it at 5-7, they probably because they finished at 5-7. I think 2 years ago they made a bowl game.
Okay.
Marshall's had a really good defense, and it's nice to be in a division with a really good offense and a really good defense. FAU loses Kendall Briles, but they then load up with like 3 or 4 former blue chip players. I think they'll be fine. Who is their new offensive coordinator? Do we want to find a reason to care? Because you and I are a combined 27 years older than FAU's offensive coordinator, Charlie Weiss Jr.
Yeah.
I will care about FAU this year even more than I did last year when I knew they were going to be good. Didn't know how good. I think the reason to care about the East begins and ends with FAU and maybe some flex of Marshall defense.
The two best teams in Conference USA this year are going to be FAU and Marshall. Those are your 2 points of caring.
I think FIU is going to be. I think Butch Davis is a good coach.
FIU, they're good up front.
Yeah,
they'll be good up front. But beyond that, I think the two teams
a lot.
To watch are going to be FAU with more talking points for sure, and then Marshall. You like the defense, but those two teams I think are the ones to watch in the conference.
They had a top 20. Top 25 defense last year in the country.
They were good.
Marshall did.
They were good. All right. Well, there you go. Thank you for tuning in to our SEC East Conference USA East flecking on the Solid Verbal. You can find us anywhere where fine podcasts are sold, be it Apple Podcasts, be it Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, you name it. We are out there. You can also find us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the usual hotspots, as well as solidverbal.com. Or if you just want to plain old-fashioned email us, we're at solidverbal@gmail.com. Don't forget, if you're listening to this show before August the 11th, go to solidverbaltickets.com if you want to buy tickets to our live show, our Fantasy Things draft on August the 11th in the great city of Chicago. Tickets are still available. And don't forget to check out solidverbal.com/store for an updated running tab of all of our new merch. If you want to stay abreast of all our action, go to solidverbal.com, sign up for the newsletter. I think that's it, Dan.
That's all I have.
All right.
I'm gonna go watch an old episode of Full House.
Go watch an old. I'm crying talking about Uncle Jesse. That was beautiful. Thank you.
I recently, and listen, this is a show about honesty. I am hopelessly in love with Lori Loughlin, Aunt Becky. And I recently looked her up on Instagram. She does not have an Instagram. At least one that I can find. Maybe she pre-blocked me. I don't know. But there were a bunch of pictures of Lori Loughlin, and she seems to be doing quite well. Life is good for Lori Loughlin.
Hear. Not doing yogurt commercials, but
Wake Up San Francisco.
Yeah. For that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildenbrand, thanks again for tuning into the show. We'll catch you all on Wednesday. In the meantime, stay solid.
Peace.
What was it? What was that called?
Grandfathered. Like he played like a very young grandfather, like in his late 40s.
That's terrible.
Yeah. In late 2016, so obviously grandfather didn't do super well, he joined the Fox black comedy series Scream Queens in the season 2 premiere as a regular Dr. Brock Holt.
That's a terrible name. He does not look like a Brock Holt.
His biggest contribution, his most lasting contribution of the last 10, whenever that movie came out.
My Big Fat Greek Wedding 2?
I would say it's probably when in Step Brothers, they ask each other who they would want to kiss if they had to kiss a dude, and they both said John Stamos.
Yeah. I didn't realize it was this bad. He was in one episode of Entourage. You say bad, but he is so consistently out there. Yeah. So it's this weird thing where he is in like a fame purgatory. Yeah. He's doing
where he's famous enough that everybody wants to have him on like network stuff.
Yeah.
But he's not good enough to carry him.
Wow.